business and in politics can do to take the small businesses that make up the majority. And I'm here with a great and very diverse panel that I'm sure will give us some really good and new ideas. We have here, to follow in his footsteps, Mark Elliott here, President for Southern Africa for MasterCard. Don't think I and Grazi.
You tried.
Country Director for Accenture here in South Africa. We're going to jump right in. We're short on time. We're going to keep it tight. Fatu, so how you wish you would have been able to overcome it?
Sure. I think starting off as an entrepreneur myself, which expanded, 1 billion people, roughly $3,000 billion GDP. Yet last year we attracted 17. Even when you look at the numbers today, last year I think we raised $1 billion overall as an African ecosystem, a tech ecosystem. But there are so many discrepancies from early stage venture capital, which is actually the toughest. The third thing is also the sector gap. I think access to energy or access to financial services, which is very close to my heart. And a second obstacle I've witnessed firsthand is, we have this big African market to have, for instance, beyond a national idea, a regional idea, a Pan-African idea, or a global idea. And I love, for instance, seeing sometime I had to hyper-grow Egypt and Congo. And let's say both are roughly 90 million plus people. But at that time, Egypt had 33 and convinced them to go online. And then maybe the one that had a basic internet literacy, I could target them with CRM, and the other one, it will be still with, I think, an impact at scale. But at the same time, you have to be very pragmatic at solving local challenges and adapting to the local.
Maybe a lot of startup founders aren't aware of how they can bridge some of these challenges.
So I think an idea that's tangible and an idea that's bankable. So, and I can speak for the geography. The point that you've just made, which is coming up with really bankable ideas that we as corporates have got a large role to play in helping entrepreneurs to become through programs where we teach them what's important. Or someone comes up with a brilliant idea, we take it from idea generation to a real accept, because if the idea isn't sound to begin with, and we have a challenge of initiatives, and if you cannot articulate a bankable idea and make it very clear, it becomes difficult to.
And especially when it comes to, there's actually money here, but there are very few big startups.
Those coordinated first. But as much as we get coordinated, because we've got lots of streams that are looking into funding of startups, but there isn't that collaboration that seeks to say, if it is through startups that will be able to turn around our economy, therefore let's invest in them. But one of the key things that we've also realized as a challenge is leveraging on the technologies that are there, but most importantly to say, how do we open up markets for this into innovation and investing in it? If people want to continue being resellers, for example, it tells you that already the market is not broadened. Because if you want to resell what is already crucial to that is funding from the startup level and up to the medium level, because we're focusing on SMEs as this government. We've been saying at least 30, we don't have water right now. What's the solution that we can bring that is not already in the market, and give them that space and make sure that we incubate?
Imagine the continent is also quite challenging for you because you have a large part of the economy that's informal. That is, these small businesses have bank accounts that don't have a credit history to sort of join the economy. And what are the things that you maybe need from a legislative point of view to change?
You need to be on record, right? And so one of the challenges for a young business is how can you start to create that data set? So what we're working on allows you to start accepting payments as a young business. And so we work with a lot and maybe take the business forward. So I think that's absolutely critical. To try and get through some of your other questions, I think a way of looking at younger businesses and giving them the opportunities to grow. And then I think the other thing is more easily. So SME marketplaces are things, we've got some examples, Janngo.Africa, which we've just launched in Egypt.
A bit of a back and forth over email before the panel, and I was sort of arguing in favor of broadening this panel to include just, small enterprises, when actually they're probably not going to be the ones that really drive macroeconomic change.
That's a fantastic question, and it's funny enough, that was what I was going to talk about, because for someone like me is that the topic of the panel is startup to scale up, and we're talking about SMEs. You have a country, and you're developing policies to help SMEs. You will not get Facebook. You will get fantastic SMEs, which South Africa has, but you won't get, because it feels like as if it's not working. But it's working. You're getting SMEs, tenderpreneurs, this conversation. We cannot have the two in the same box. They're different.
So what's on the top of your...
If you want to build an innovation-driven economy, you have to invest deeply in... There are fantastic businesses in South Africa that are building scale-ups. There's one company, small businesses here in South Africa. What you want is startups that go to scale-ups. You need the entrepreneurs to lead. So you can't give them support. You don't ask me. I'm coming from Napa Valley in California. I don't know what their challenges are. But the local entrepreneurs do. And on few of them, in Katligo's case, he was your colleague at Jumia, I believe. So he's seen it before. People like me, I've seen it. Where you can support others like you. How can we support your community? How can we help you build a community and support it?
Actually, most of my investment thesis lies in the intersection between startups and SMEs. The reason is, I think we share that in common. We are passionate about using technology to advance 80 to 90% of the employments. That being said, when you find ways, and it can be startups solving those problems, to accelerate the access to market, to African SMEs, you directly have an impact on, for instance, the trade balance of so many countries. I was giving the example of how have a trade balance that is positive, it's value-wise, they actually import more volume-wise, and one of the questions was logistics. And the cost of moving goodness. And same for instance, access to capital. We're talking how it's tough for SME to build a track record. And you actually have been the policy making and how we can make one and each other and the other grow. We actually have a responsibility and a huge opportunity in
I think, Minister, you wanted to jump in there.
Just to add to what she spoke about in responding to what he said, which is why once more we say there's a need for a separate funding that must be looking at that. You're correct, there are great innovation centers that are able to give innovators an opportunity to showcase their potential, which is why one of the key things is the protection of their IP as they're doing that. Because one of the things that we've managed to do is to make sure that ever since President Ramaphosa took over, actually even with the former president of social media platforms, if they themselves cannot respond to that, at least let them get officials to respond to those needs. Because we understand that they have market to say, yes, you have came up with a great idea, we've taken to this level, we invested in it, and therefore opening access for you. And the way to do that is to make sure that
the people working in sort of the tech world is the high cost of data. And that's one legislation we've all been waiting for a long time.
The regulator is considering the policy direction because they have got to make sure that they avoid an opportunity of being litigated to get consensus majority. That's what they're looking for. And certainly this minister that is talking to you now will be meeting the regulator to get a rollout.
Has some truth. In the context of other regions like South Africa, we cannot just do innovation only. We also have to drive it from policy. So that's true. However, we've got to spend more time now focusing our energies on being innovative and producing startups that are going to be unicorns. When you look at geographies that are successful in the world, looking at the US, you come from the US. Looking at
I'm from Nigeria. I live in the US.
Okay, you flew from the US coming here. But the point is, in other geographies that are successful, they build family businesses, they build unicorns. Malaysia is a good example. Singapore is a very good example. Korea is one. Japan is one. And if we, as the African continent, want to be successful and move the dial and the drive to become more innovative, to drive our economic growth, to drive down unemployment and improve our poverty statistics, we've got to dial up the innovative agenda. We've got to make sure that we focus on funding. Now, this is not going to just come from public service or government only. It's a joint initiative by venture capitalists, by ensuring that government provides support in the form of policy, in the form of the right level of funding to create the enabling environment. But we also need to make choices as the country or as the nations in the African continent. We've got to ask ourselves the question, what do we want to be known for? Because this question is very critical. We cannot solve each and every problem in our continent ourselves. But we've got to ask ourselves, where is our competitive advantage? And focus on that which is competitive advantage that can help us to be ahead of the curve in the spaces that we choose and innovate in those spaces to grow our economies and to grow our, the amount of work. And then the question of building skills, we build those skills in the focus areas that we have chosen. I think if we take this strategy and thinking of focus on dialing up the innovative agenda, making sure that there's funding in place and the policy environment is enabling all of these innovators and entrepreneurs in our region to be successful, we'll get somewhere.
I think this is a good moment to move on to the audience. I see some people who are impatient to jump in. The lady here in the front. I think we need a mic, yeah.
My name is Sandy, so I run an innovation lab. My question is directed to the minister. So to date, we've had a BE policy in place, and the results are not pleasing. As you can see, still 20% of corporate is still managed by white individuals, I'll just be very frank. And so my question to the minister is that, I mean, saying that you want businesses required to procure from startups or SMEs 30%, given the current policy, we're not going to achieve that based on what we've the trend that we've seen. So I would want to understand from your perspective is, what are we going to do differently this time around? And to that, also procuring from a startup doesn't mean that the CSI division or the charity section of the business is procuring from me, because if that happens, I become a pet project. So it'll be like a once-off check. They'll take photos with me, it'll be great, but there'll be no future thereafter in terms of revenue growth. So I want to access the real people in the business that make the real decisions that actually generate revenue, so that I can have a pipeline. So that's my question to you. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Yandisa. And if you listened earlier, I said one of the weaknesses that we've identified is the fact that we have failed to invest in scaling up startups, which is why we're focused on 30% that must look at these startups, and then we scale them up. Now, we said there's a need for us to do a complete overhaul of the laws, starting with the procurement bill of the Treasury, for example, to say you're inviting everyone to bid, this is the specification, and therefore you're going for the cheaper price than whatever service provider. Does it enable innovation and give an opportunity to startups? Those are the engagements that we have. Then we said, let's make inputs on this. What is it that is problematic in relation to the PFMA that we're talking about right now? There's a discussion that we are holding with Treasury, but on the procurement bill also, what are the issues that are prohibiting startups to grow? Of course, to say we're committing government to procure 30% from startups is introduction levels. To say those that have not been given an opportunity to access bigger scales, let them have access there so that they can prove it. Because one of the key things that people, when they want to be mischievous and not give an opportunity to startups, is to say capacity, quality, and all that. Now, if one has proven beyond doubt that he's capable of delivering on that, then what's stopping you? And that's what he said earlier. We also need a mind shift, not just at the policy level, but also in terms of the kind of officials that we have that must understand that you don't have to be like Accenture for you to be able to deliver certain services, or you don't have to be big to be the best. You're able to play your part and shine in your corner. It doesn't matter how little you are. All you are asking asking for is an opportunity, which is where we said there's a need for us to change how we do things. There's a need for us to introduce incentives for those that are capable but are lacking access and of course, capital that they must be able to enhance their potential.
Another question here.
Hello, my name is Vivian Nwaka, founder of MedZaf, and MedZaf is an enterprise pharma solution for hospitals and pharmacies. So one of the challenges we launched in Nigeria about 2 years ago, one of the huge challenges that we faced is that we wanted to be this platform that we could scale across the world very easily, and we would just have suppliers and we would have off-takers sign up, right? But we ended up having to build from scratch. We became a bank. We had to finance our customers. We became a distributor. We have to deliver our medications. We have to do quality control. And we're doing all of these various pieces of this business that in many other markets it's already a given. So how are you looking to support startups who have these huge, massive ideas that are scalable across the world and can ease, huge problems worldwide? How are you looking to support them as they start in countries like Nigeria, where they have to build from scratch, which takes a lot of financing and money that they don't have?
Anybody wants to volunteer?
One thing, and this is why I keep insisting that the right approach to doing this scale-up business is an ecosystem approach. And just to, Fatoumata talked a lot about the businesses at the intersection of SMEs and scale-ups or innovation-driven enterprises. And that's a point that's worth double-clicking on, because, again, these solutions, that the entrepreneurs are asking for, I don't think we can rely on government or big companies to provide them. No. I don't think that's going to work. But what needs to happen is we need to deeply invest in our talent to be able to understand at a conceptual level how to solve those problems in our context. And this is what we keep shying away from as an ecosystem. There are people who are trying to solve some of these challenges in Nigeria, whether they're payment challenges or finance challenges and so on and so forth. However, because there isn't an ecosystem approach to solving these problems, we're asking the wrong people to come and solve problems entrepreneurs should be solving. In other markets, some markets have adopted the approach of telling people to build everything within one big company. But many other countries, especially in the US, just invest in other entrepreneurs, invest in other entrepreneurs to build those solutions. So I think ultimately, the moment as Africans, we start to understand that all the problems that we are trying to solve, and you mentioned something about startups, SMEs providing more economic viability. Well, look, the game in the world we're in is no longer just about which has the most scale. It's about levers of productivity. And that's what scale-ups give you. They give you Facebook, which can increase the revenues of small businesses in America by X%, and can distribute payments and communications by Y%. There's no one that's looking anymore to governments or big companies to support startups. We have to innovate our way out of those problems. And I think that's the biggest challenge today. The biggest challenge today with going from, in my own experience, startup to scale up, is simply there is no innovation ecosystem that supports talent. Because let's remember, it's not just businesses. They're talent to build the solutions that the market needs. And until we get more serious about investing in efforts like Sholomongo or other hubs that are providing this infrastructure for innovators who can take her problem and say, who's going to solve payments? Who's going to solve logistics? We're not going to go far.
And to build maybe...
Sorry. So I think just to answer the question, so I think in the payment space there's a couple of different opportunities there. We, in MasterCard, obviously in the payment space, we have a program called StartPath, where a startup or somebody who's kind of first round funding can actually come through and join that program, and then they get exposure globally, and ultimately through that program and exposure globally can pick up arrangements with buyers, right? So that's a fantastic elevation to have some type of global arrangement. So that's one idea. The other idea is I don't think it's all about putting down infrastructure, quite frankly. I think we've passed a little bit of that. Obviously, there is an infrastructure play in some places, but we really live in a world of open APIs and trying to establish connectivity. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting everybody does it, but you can go into the MasterCard Developer Zone. It's online, and you can actually download all of the API specs before you walk out of the room. And it's very easy to actually establish connectivity with those open APIs and actually get your business going as long as you've got the right talent in your business to actually do it. So I think that, you know...
And the regulatory approval.
And the regulatory approval and the licenses and all that good stuff. But I'm just saying, I think it's about having the right talent in the business to be able to navigate and to set yourself up and create the right linkages. It's not all about infrastructure. I think what we're starting to see come through in a lot of different countries in Africa is that there is a focus on localization, and I think that's a very positive thing to do to elevate local fintechs and local companies as they come through. But what I'm seeing as the gap, and something where we're trying to help, is how can we help these young companies actually establish those linkages so that they can take their business through to the next level. And I think APIs are obviously an easy way to do that.
And I think there's also a capital answer to her question, because at some point when you look at Vivian's business, at the beginning of the day, she wants to create quality value chain for healthcare. But then because she has to become maybe a payment aggregator, even though she's not, you know, a vertical payment, a logistic, if she talks to global investors, she will be expecting an exit maybe 3 to 5 years, because maybe it's a timeline that they get in the valley. If she talks to DFIs, they will have patient capital, but they will have maybe little value added and understanding on her day-to-day businesses. She doesn't have enough yet corporate venture capitals that are operating in Nigeria and able to help them scale across Africa. And she's missing strong angel networks, right? So there is a mismatch between the quality of capital she would need from seed, because I've known her for a while, from seed to becoming a unicorn. And it's not only about the money, it's also about the operational support and what she's getting today. And that's why it's a bit tough. And I think part of what I'm doing, and I think E is also along these lines, is trying to have VC funds that are still taking the best of Western worlds when it comes to attracting global investors and delivering solid commercial returns, but also adapt to our market realities, which is looking at maybe 5 to 7 years investment period and a longer time to exit, finding, you know, strategic investors that will come as anchors. So for instance, I was very proud for my first fund to have an evergreen family office, and they will tell me, okay, at some point this is kind of a R&D and strategy arm for us, and in 25 years when Vivian want to sell, maybe you can be a good candidate to buy it, if it's not another PE fund or if it's not maybe an IPO. Huh? I wish you that. And this is very unfair as an African entrepreneur, because everywhere else in the world you have a very solid value chain of capital. In the US, you have successful entrepreneurs who became angels themselves. You have Silicon Valley Bank. You have you know, countless VC funds and PE funds, and you have global ones that are coming. In Africa, you know, our tycoons are not yet investing in local funds. CVC is oftentimes actually from global investors and not local ones. Angel networks are too few and making very micro-sized deals. And VC funds tend to do Series A+, right? So for instance, Bartek was announced last year. That's great. They have 100 million to fund African startups, but 3 deals made so far, all 3 million plus. And you need to come at maybe 20, 200K, $500,000 to be able to actually witness someone like Vivian to go from startup to scale up. So I think we have to also be able to come together and find ways between policy and CVCs and angels and VCs to solve this, you know, capital value chain to help them go from startup to scale up.
I think that's a really good moment to end also because we're out of time. But maybe just to wrap up, so we're going to build more of an ecosystem. We're going to build more of a value chain, and data prices in South Africa will fall. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for coming, for contributing to the conversation.